Kamrimo, to everybody present here. My name is Jordan Kinsum Tsiring Namchu, and I will be the moderator for this webinar. Before we begin, I would like to mention a few important tips, some rules for this webinar to go smoothly. So firstly, it is my duty to let all of you know that you are being recorded. Yes, and we will perhaps use this recording in our YouTube channel later. So I would request everybody to kindly use your microphone and camera accordingly. Yeah. Secondly, I'd like to request all the participants to kindly keep their microphones in mute so that it may not be distracting to the speaker, right? If you have any suggestions or any comments, could you kindly use the chat box to do the same? Our organizing team will definitely take into cognizance of what you want to convey to us. Also, I will mention this later as well, but might as well mention it now. So after the webinar, there will definitely be a question and answer session. And for the question and answer session, I would request all the participants to kindly type your respective questions in the chat box and not turn on your microphone and ask them. I repeat, I would ask all the participants to kindly type your respective questions in the chat box. I will read those questions and personally convey it to Ryennyoo Dr. Jenny Bentley. Thank you. Third point, should you lose connection and should you not find yourself in this meeting, I would like to request the person who's just lost the connection to kindly click on the same link. Yeah, our organizers will admit you in and you can be a part of this webinar again. Thank you. So without wasting much time, I would like to call upon Ryennyoo Dr. Melissa Namchu to kindly deliver the introduction for RLCWS.
Kamri, everyone. Thank you, Jody. So, Ronggring Lepcha Culture and Welfare Society is a non-profit body that has been set up with the objective of preserving and propagating the ancient language, tradition, and culture of the Lepcha society. Betterment and social upliftment of the Lepcha folks is also a major objective of RLCWS. It aims to achieve these objectives by adopting and promoting online learning of the language, supporting traditional arts and crafts, and continuously conceiving of activities that can help ancient society play a relevant role in the world. Language is an intrinsic to the expression of culture. As a means of communicating values, beliefs, and customs, it has an important social function and fosters feelings of group identity and solidarity. It is the means by which culture and its traditions and shared values may be conveyed and preserved. A total of 197 of around 2,500 languages feature on UNESCO's list of endangered languages from India. Lepcha is one of the languages. Ronggring started off as an offshoot of Milecrafts with the aim of promoting Lepcha language around the world. To date, more than 130 students across 10 countries, India, Bhutan, Czech Republic, UK, Japan, Canada, Netherlands, have learned the language. Now I hand over to Ren Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ryennyoo Dr. Melissa, for the introduction. Now, I would like to call upon our esteemed president of our society to kindly deliver his words.
Thank you, Jordan. Ladies and gentlemen, Kamrimo, greetings. I have great pleasure in welcoming you to this webinar. I would also like to thank you for joining in. The initial registrations has really encouraged us because of the spontaneity, and it is our endeavor, therefore, to match your expectations with our presentation today. For that, we have the highly esteemed and knowledgeable speaker in Dr. Jenny Bentley, and along with two of my younger colleagues from the society who will moderate and conduct the proceedings. Dr. Melissa has just opened the session with the introduction on the society and what it aims for. And Jordan has taken on the mantle of moderating the webinar. Well, he has as you have already heard, he has a nice and rich baritone. It's quite a rarity among the Lepchas, but we hope that the voice will carry the Lepcha message far and wide. I feel proud to say that these two people are fine examples of the up and coming Lepcha youth, and they are the examples for the others to emulate. Now that brings us to the moot question of why this webinar and what for. Plainly put, it's an effort to reach out to the world to inform the existence of a unique specimen of humankind, the Lepchas, a mountain folk concentrated on a speck of land on the southern fringes of the eastern Himalayas. So small has the region been that it has remained elusive despite modern cartography. But then, now, of course, thanks to advancements in technology, one can zoom in and the lectures can zoom out and connect. Wonderful. Feel like saying Achule also. So this is the land they have lived for ages and for which the greater period for centuries was spent in splendid isolation. A boon of sorts for the lectures to develop their mores, traditions, values, and for the culture to evolve and to refine and crystallize, say in the crucible of time, if I may borrow the expression, into the Lepcha ethos. So that's how it came about. For emphasis, legend has it that the Lepchas originated from the pure snow of Kanchenjunga. This gives an indication of the ancient connection to the land they call Mayal land. There is no legend to suggest that the Lepchas migrated here. There isn't a trace even in the communal memory. People the world over have migrated at some point of time in history and settled down permanently. So it's normal for scholars to wonder where the Lepchas landed here from. They probably looked eastward and northwards, saw the close physical affinity with the peoples there and proffered conjectures that haven't quite caught the fancy of their own community. But the question is ingrained and remains to be answered. The truth must be known. With advancements in various disciplines of academia and in science and technology, we should make progress. The lectures have been infected by the migration virus, so to speak, and it's gnawing the mind. This is perhaps an example of the side effects of scholarship where the subject is left in a quandary. But till then, we'll have to keep on moving and in learning more of these people. And that's where this seminar comes in. We have the speaker in Dr. Jenny Bentley, who has studied the Lepchas for over 2 decades and possesses impeccable credentials to deal with the subject. She would require no introduction, but we will do the customary honors. I thank you, Ryennyoo, for having so graciously accepted our invitation to speak today. We have a very receptive audience, eagerly waiting for me to move over, but not before I thank each one of you once again for joining in. I trust that you will find this webinar a new and an edifying experience. We look forward to meet you again. Thank you very much. Kamrimo.
Tokchimo, Ren, for your wonderful address, as always. Now, without any further ado, I would like to introduce the speaker for the day. Yes. Okay. So, as an associate researcher at ISEK University of Zürich, Ryennyoo Dr. Jenny Bentley completed her PhD titled "The Guardians of the Land and Water: Ritual, Indigenous Belongings and Vulnerability," based on her extensive research conducted in Sikkim and Kalimpong from 2008 to 2014. Currently, she is working on a research project on Lepcha storytelling, empowerment, and language learning in collaboration with the University of Toronto, as well as an applied anthropology project on ecotourism and indigenous knowledge in Lingtim Zongo. This is funded by the K2 Action Grant in collaboration with EcoStream and MLAS. These projects focus on knowledge transfer through modern media, such as animation movies, storytelling, interpretation centers, and ethnographic workshops. Further, based on current fieldwork, she co-authored publications of the U4 Anti-Corruption Resource Center that inform and advise members of development community, maybe funders, non-governmental organizations, etc., with regard to anti-corruption measures on a policy level. Now, let me also add that Ryennyoo Dr. Jenny Bentley has become a household name for research scholars like me who are particularly interested in the Lepcha community. Having read quite a few of her papers myself, her writings are very vivid, and Ryennyoo is extremely meticulous and thorough in her methodology as well as methods of research. Her ethnographic work in the Eastern Himalayan region comes as a very refreshing and a much needed departure from the erstwhile stagnant colonial anthropology. This I find is very pertinent, especially in the post-colonial context that itself encapsulates a plethora of discourses pertaining to representation and multiple voices. Now, without wasting much time, I would like to call upon our speaker for the day, Dr. Jenny Bentley.
Yeah, Kamrimo, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Jordan, for the kind introduction. I'm excited for the opportunity to speak here today, and I'd like to thank the Wrong Ring Society for organizing this webinar. I am happy to see familiar names and some familiar faces in the crowd that is listening today. I'm also very happy to see a lot of Lepcha names, also of people I don't know. So I'm very happy to not only speak, I don't know, globally, but actually to members of the Lepcha community and engage with all of you here today on my research. So I'm going to start my presentation. I hope this works. Getting into what Jordan just said, maybe about the voices and the post-colonial context in which I do define my ethnography. I do need to clarify in the beginning that I in no way intend to speak for the Lepcha, nor is that whatever I am talking about a complete overview of religious practices or their interactions with the environment. It is really based on my fieldwork and my interviews with senior Bunthings and elders in Zongu. So for the people here who are not familiar with the region, the picture you see here is sort of the upper portion of Zongu. Zongu is an indigenous reserve area in the north of Sikkim, so it's reserved for Lepcha people. It has been that for more than a century now. I conducted research there from 2008 until 2014. A little bit of research in 2006 for my master's, but the main chunk 2008 until 14. So this is the time frame also that whatever I'm talking about today will be based on. I have been back since, but haven't done research in that context. So I would also like to mention Kacho Lepcha here, Dr. Kacho Lepcha by now. I don't think he could join today because he had other obligations, but we did a lot of this research together. He was working with me, supported me in, being able to even go into houses and talk with people initially, introduced me, helped me understand basic Lepcha, worked on translations with me, and more than anything, we kind of discussed a lot of things together. So this was crucial for this work here. So this is a map of Zongu, and to contextualize my research a little bit more, it is focused on the villages of Lingtem, Tingbong, and Pentong in Upper Zongu. And a lot of it will, what I'm talking about today, will be focused in and around Lingtem. And before I do start then completely, I would like to introduce the four main Bunthing to you that I'm very obliged to. In Zongu, actually, the name used for Bunthing would be Padim. I am using Bunthing here because it is just more commonly used within the Lepcha community than the word Padim, but they would self-refer to themselves as Padim. It is basically based on their ancestral knowledge, my webinar today, and they shared it patiently with me in interviews and conversations. They also let me observe, document the rituals they perform, and then come back ample times with questions on what is this and what is that. So here you see Netuk Lepcha. At the time I did my research, he was the main Bunthing in Lingtem village and was in charge of the annual community rituals. Currently he's over 70. This is a bit older picture. Netuk is from the Tsetilim-Putso, which is probably the oldest and maybe previously the only clan in Lingtem village. I will get back to this clan later on in my talk. Maybe just a short remark on my Lepcha pronunciation. I am sorry for all the mother tongue Lepcha speakers who might not find the words exactly reproduced as they would reproduce them. Some vowels are hard for me to pronounce. One reason why I joined the Wrong Ring classes was to work on the pronunciation of certain vowels that are not so easy for us, so please apologize. My apologies to all the Lepcha speakers out there. The second Bunthing I would like to introduce is Kinchok Lepcha. He is the senior Bunthing of Pentong village. He is in his early 90s now. So his clan is the Atim Putso. This clan is the clan of all the male residents of Pentong. Pentong is one of the only villages where all the male men living there have the same clan. The women would be married into the village. So according to his oral tradition, the Atim Putso, the Salong Putso, which was founded by Tikum and Salong, that many of you will be aware of, and the Garkum Tum Putso are the oldest clans in Zongu itself. I will get back to the Garkum Tum Putso just in a while. So, and actually, Lopan Sonam Chiring Tamsang, that most of you will be aware of from Kalimpong, told me a very, very interesting narrative that he collected in Pentong in the 1980s. When he was visiting the village, he said that the clan actually received their name because they supported and protected Panoge Boch. Atim means big and of high status. So, then here you see Doji Chiring Lepcha from Payel, Dingwong. He is in his late 40s when the picture was taken. He was among the youngest religious specialists I talked to and observed the rituals of. He was very knowledgeable though. His father was also a Bunthing, and his father was or he would be, but his father was a representative of one of the 6 families of the various hamlets of Tingwong that helped to organize the royal conscience ritual that used to be performed in Tingwong. I will get back to this also. It was performed by the clan I mentioned beforehand, the Garkum Tumputo. And here you see the last conscience thing. So he was a Samtup Tasho Lepcha, also known as the Num Tasso. He used to perform this ritual that was sponsored by the King of Sikkim. I interviewed him in June 2011. Sadly, he died in an aftershock of the 2011 earthquake when he was 84 years old. So I could never go back and talk to him more about that first initial interview I did with him. So today is actually, I don't know if you call this an anniversary, but it's been 10 years since the earthquake in 2018. It was on the 2011, what am I saying? It was on the 18th of September 2011. 6.9 on the Richter scale. It had a massive impact on Sikkim, but the main area of devastation was up in North Sikkim and also centered around Zonggu. So they had a big impact on the lives and the livelihoods of people. I'm not going to show a lot of images, but these are just 2 mirror images here of a road between Linja village and Bay. So it's on the way to Pentong village, but also on the way to Tolong Monastery. That used to be motorable, so you could drive up it, and we had to walk on. It was just completely destroyed. And here you see one side of Bay, what was Bay village. So the entire hill came sliding down and buried the houses on that side, except that one house you see in the picture. So the earthquake also had a big impact on ritual practice at the time. In the aftermath of the earthquake, I was in Zonggu, and I met, this is an example, the Linjabun thing, and he basically said, you know, I have no time to talk to you, I have no time, I have to run, I have lots of rituals to perform. So there was a massive increase of ritual activity after the earthquake. So today I'm kind of going to talk a bit about why ritual practice became so important after the earthquake to restore a sort of form of normalcy. But also I will unravel an indigenous way of conceptualizing the world, the environment, and all the beings that inhabit this environment and the interactions between them. So I based this webinar around 2 community rituals in Zonggu, because rituals are the interaction with the supernatural. So they are both rituals that protect the village and the livelihood of the people, so the crops, the animals, and the wider environment. They are preventive rituals performed for community health, personal health, prosperity, social harmony. So the first one is Sotap Rumfat. Sotap in Lepcha means hail, but it is not only to prevent hail, it is a ritual to protect the village and the crops from natural disaster, destruction from, say, too little rain, too much rain, thunderstorms, hail. It is performed at the end of winter in the Lepcha months of Kursong or Thong, which would be either January, February, or February, March. The second ritual is called Chirim. Chirim is performed later in the Lepcha months of Sum, which would be March, April, or Numtan, which would be April, May, May-ish, like that. The latest I've ever seen it performed was June. And it's performed in order to prevent diseases from spreading among the inhabitants or the livestock, or also the crops. It also averts social unrest, quarrels, harm, like that. So Chirim is most likely derived from Tibetan or Lokay, and would mean common ritual. There is, though, also a Lepcha word called Rimro, which would mean formal religious ceremony. The fact that the name is from Loke would has to do also with the connection with the royally funded ritual, the conscience ritual, which I'll be talking about later. So each of these rituals has a specific place in Zongu, where it is performed. Here you see the ritual place for Chirim in Bentong. Chirim is always performed in a more secluded place. It is considered the more dangerous ritual, and not that many people attend it. This place is quite impressive. It overlooks the whole valley on a rock. Satap Rumfat is performed in a more accessible place, because traditionally the village leaders were elected during Satap Rumfat. So here, the only time I could observe this from happening, it still happens, was in Nampatan, a village outside of Zongu, just on the opposite side of the valley. Here you see the Bumthing of Nampatan and the newly elected village leader called Gyapan. The Gyapan is a Tibetan title that was given during the Sikkimese kingdom. It basically means a village administrator, and they were under the mandal. So these elections still do happen, but they're only every 3 years. So I only managed to see an election once. So all rituals I observed, they have a bamboo or wooden altar that is called Tomtsu, and it has like a platform which is covered with banana leaves, and it is always directed towards the mountains. Usually it's at the side. In this picture it's in front. So at the side you would have horizontal sticks where all the offerings are hung that the village community contributes. I mentioned this specifically. Here you can see they will make these small little bamboo baskets, and then the offerings, the gyapam, will go from house to house in the village and will collect specific offerings from every village household. And one of the main offerings is a mix of various grains, and these will be put into banana leaves, and then they will be put into these baskets and hung at the side. The reason why I mentioned this is because this is the main contribution of the villagers. This is how they attend the ritual. You don't need to physically be at the ritual. You need to contribute to the offerings that are given to the deities. So on this Tomtsu, there is the Lofe offering. Lo means leaf or shield, and Fe means to cut or to assemble, interestingly. So all this is very apt. You have cut banana leaves, but the leaves are like a shield, the question of protection, the protective ritual. And it is also the place where then the individual deities will be called onto. So this is a picture you'll be seeing again and again in my presentation, because on the Lofe in Lingtem, this is from Lingtem, there are 4 eggs. And I remember watching the Lingtem Bumthing write these signs on these eggs, and I was like asking him, what do these signs mean? So each sign basically dedicates the egg to a specific deity or a group of deities. When you're facing the altar on the left side, so that would be facing more towards the mountains, is Konchensu or Nekanchemponu. Then in the middle, you will find the Konchendik, which are the Konchen soldiers. I will talk more about this in detail. And on the bottom, on the other side, you find Chadong Razu, which is towards the lower side. And then in the middle, in front, you have the Lungzi Lungnam, or how I will call them in this presentation, the Liangduk Ongdok. They are the guardians, the local guardians of the land. So first, I will talk about the 2 opposing sides, so Konchenponu and Chadong Razu, these deities and what they symbolize, because based on them, I will unravel sort of a multi-storied cosmos that is the base of a conceptualization of the world as told to me by the Lepcha Bumthings. So Nekanchemponu resides in Mount Kanchenjunga. Most of you will know of that, and is the main protected mountain deity. So he is associated with anything that is up, the upper realms, and the north. There is not only Kanchan up there are other mountain deities and other supernatural embodied in the upper mountains. The word that the Bumthing will use for this positioning within the cosmos is Tol. You will find the same word in KP Thompson's dictionary as Tal or Tal. I guess this is a local difference in pronunciation. It basically means above and upwards. So I suggest that this is an up that is still visible. So it is embedded within the geography, within the physical environmental space that the people can see. So the mountains in this case. And sorry to explain my graphic, I'm sorry it is a bit rudimentary. The line you see there is basically symbolizes the mountains, and then the valley is going down to the plains. And you will see this graphic again too. So Chadong Razu, on the other hand, that you see below, is associated with the lowlands, the plains, the south. And the Bungthings use the word Chol for that. Similarly to many other Himalayan shamanic religious traditions, the upper realm is associated with the male mountain deities, with benevolent supernatural beings, purity but barrenness, whereas the lower realms are associated with female deities, fertility, but also with illness. So Chadong Razu Anyu is a female deity. She is sometimes described as malevolent, sometimes described as the guardian of illnesses, but also attributed with the ability to cure. So I can't go into this in too much detail, but any supernatural I've come across, at least in Lepcha religious tradition, is ambivalent. There's always a good and there's a bad. There's some which are more ascribed to be Mung, which would be more malevolent beings, and other that are more ascribed to be Rum, which would be deities or benevolent, but they all have two sides to it. I'll get back to this in just a second. So what I'm saying here is that in my interpretations or experiences of what the Bungthings told me, is that more than the characteristics of the specific individual deity, the distinction of their residency. So these axes, like being resident in the northern realms and the upper realms, or being below, and keeping these parts separate. So the sense of spatiality is more important. So if we look at, this is from a ritual performed by the Lingten Bungthing. It is shortened, there are a lot more words in it, but this is just essence of it, would be Chol Nongbu Chadong Razu Liangka Nongat Mu. Tol Nongbu Nekonshen Liangka Nongat Mu. So they've called the deities to the altar, but it's very, very important that everyone goes back to where they come from. So this separating of the lower realms and the upper realms is very important within the understanding of the world through this Indigenous Lepcha of epistemology. So what impacts the life of the humans and the residents is movement between these realms. So when deities from the up come to the lower realms, you have many such examples in Lepcha mythology. They are either transformative, but they are very often also dangerous. Like one example that at least many Lepcha Wangi will know is, for example, for the consecration of the first marriage, they try to get yeast from the underworld, from some Lee Sumbong, the guardian deity of the East. So all these animals. So everyone, please excuse that small technical glitch. My computer battery just died on me. So I had to come back in again. Anyway, so I was talking about the movements between the different realms and how they are either transformative but also dangerous, and talking about how, you know, they were trying to get the yeast from the underworld, and of course she was protecting it, and different animals tried to get it. I'll not go into detail, but basically characteristics of theirs changed. But then in the end, also the actual produce, so the local beer, was also cursed. So it brought danger into the world. It transformed something in the long run. It's always like that now. So in Zongu, with these two specific rituals I'm talking about, again, this is not exclusive. There may be lots of other reasons and lots of other incidents in different rituals and different performances. But in these specific rituals, the supernatural movement that causes this danger, again, I am going to refer back to, hang on, let me get there. Why is it not going? Excuse me, let me just, what's wrong with my navigator? There you go. Get back to this image I showed you beforehand. So now I will talk about the Conchenvik. So it's because it is the movement of these soldiers of the main mountain deity that bring the danger, that cause the upheaval, that requires the ritual performance. So they are actually benevolent beings. They are protectors of the mountain deity. They reside in the upper realm, but twice a year they move down towards the south. And it is this movement that requires the ritual performance by the religious specialists in Zongu. So this is connected to the conscience ritual that I was talking about beforehand. And this was a connection that I wasn't aware of, and I'd not read anywhere before talking to the Lincoln Bungthing, actually. So in one of his, actually all of his Chilim recitations, he will say in Lepcha, this is translated, actually the Gorkum Tumpto should be offering to you, but be satisfied with what I am offering from my side. So I went to look into what this was actually about. And so this clan of the Conscience Bungthing that I talked about is a very powerful lineage of religious specialists, because this clan's Chu, every Lepcha clan has an associated mountain, and their Chu is Conscience. So they are connected with the main protector mountain deity. According to a myth that was collected in the 1940s by Halfdan Seeger, the ancestor, the first holder of this religious lineage, his maternal uncles are the Conscience soldiers. So he's also related to these supernatural beings, according to the myth. And the original ancestor started a ritual in honor of the mountain deity after a snake, it's also a long story, very short version here, after a snake blocked the river and flooded the region, and then he was asked to perform the ritual. And ever since then, these rituals were performed annually. So goes the myth. Then, and this is something we find in the mythology to the Chirin ritual, this clan supported the Namgyal dynasty in a war. I assume this alliance dates back to the end of the 17th, early 18th century, when there was the War of Succession. I've written about this in an article, and I'll not get into it, but if anyone is interested, I can answer it in the question and answer, or also in a personal communication. And so I'll not go into the historical details here, but the myth explains that the king requested soldiers from the residents of Zongu, and they didn't have any. So they performed a ritual to Conscience, asking for support, and he gave them, through the ritual, 3 animals. And these animals were brought to the battlefields and turned into diseases. With help of these diseases, the Sikkimese army won the war, but then the diseases started killing their own people, so the Conscience Bungthing was called to perform a ritual to stop this. And ever since then, until 1975, this lineage used to perform a ritual twice a year that was sponsored by the Chogyal, by the Sikkimese king, and one of them was at the eve of Panglapsol, the main state ritual for Mount Kanchenjunga. And in Tingbong, each hamlet had a representative that was in charge of organizing this ritual. And the representative of Nung was the Bungthing, and then every other hamlet had one. And they all held the title of Tasu. So here you see the ritual site, how it looks currently, or a few years ago when I was there. And so what happened with this ritual was that when the Conscience Bungthing went down to the royal palace, he was followed by the Conscience soldiers. So all these, the diseases, basically, these soldiers came down with him. And it was at that time that these community rituals were performed in every village to prevent the diseases from attacking their village. And when he came back, they went back with him. So interestingly, even though the ritual is not performed anymore, the religious specialist does not go to Gangtok or wherever the royal palace was at that time. Now it would be in Gangtok anymore, but the soldiers still do. So in this way of looking at the world, in this ontology or epistemology, the ritual obligation, the obligation to the supernatural doesn't stop when the earthly obligation stops. It's still there. So there are, in present-day ritual practice, so reminiscence of this. So, for example, this is Chirim in Tingvong, and this is the altar for the Konshan soldiers. It is separated in the upper and the lower realm, where they move along, and there's lots of paraphernalia. You can't see it that well on this picture, but they have walking sticks, but these are the long sticks. They have shields, they have clothes, they have strings for bridges. So basically everything is there to make sure they get down safely and get back up again safely, and have a move through the lands as fast and as quickly as possible, which is also what the Bungthing says. Pass through our lands, don't harm us, go back quickly. In Pentong, there is actually still a ritual part called Parnap that is performed. Parnap in Lepcha means sort of closing, rounding off, 3 days after Chiringam Sataplungfat. No other village does it anymore. The Lingtem Bungthing remembers it. Other village Bungthings remember it, but they don't perform it anymore. So this was basically the ending of the ritual when the Konshan Bungthing came back. The soldiers went back, then the last part of the ritual was done. So to end this bit of historical part, I theorize that this is not exceptional. You know, that ritual practice was adapted to when a war happened, when new things happened. This is not exceptional to Lepcha ritual practice or religious epistemology, because ritual practice is an interaction with the supernatural that adapts to whatever new context is happening. When an incident happens, it requires an interaction with the supernatural that you share your space with. Another example, which is also a bit historical, but not connected to any political changes, would be in the mid-19th century, there was a devastating landslide that came down Penang and Lingtem area. It is documented in Hooker, in the journals of the famous botanist. And ever since then, there was a ritual performed annually against landslides, a Rutvat. This ritual was performed until the last, about a generation ago, when the last Bungthing stopped, he died, and then the next generation didn't do it anymore. So this was also an annual practice where an incident happened, it was a natural disaster, and it brought by an annual ritual performance that had to be done after that. So now I want to come to the probably most embedded part in the life and the world and the environment of the people, the fourth egg on our altar in Lingtem, which is the Liangdok Umdok, or the Lungzi Lungnan, as I've written it here. So this translated, Liang and Ung means the land and the water, and the word Dok means protector, but importantly also means owner. So these supernatural are described as the not only the non-humans that protect the lands, they are also considered owners and or co-owners of the land, the environment, the space in which the people live. So this is a very different way of looking at the world and your environment. The land you've bought or you have registered in the land the revenue department is not only yours, it also belongs to non-human beings. And similarly to how you would have to interact with human neighbors that you have or animal neighbors that you have, you also need to interact with them, and there's specific rules and specific courtesies of how these interactions happen. So another important distinction is that in colloquial Lepcha, when they talk about the sacred space or the mountain or the sacred bamboo groves, or since it's World Bamboo Day today, the sacred bamboo groves, they would say, for example, Kanchentu is the mountain. Whereas ritual language is very clear. When they call the deities into their abodes and into the altar, they say Nangbu, which means those ones that are living there, that are sitting there. So it really is a sense of residence, of living in this space. So in the, this is the image that shows sort of in these between lands, between the trajectory of up and down, you have the middle realm, which is where the humans live, which is where the Liangdok Umdok are, and where the upper and the lower deities pass through. So the ritual practice, the community ritual practices, they are prayers in all directions, as the Bungthing says here, to protect the space. So, and there's a very specific way of how the guardians are called upon that I will kind of show based on the Lingtem rituals. how they close off, they activate different guards to close off the space and get divine protection. So I'm sorry, this is probably not so well visible. It's a very old map and I haven't had time to make it new. This is Lingtem village. Just a short description, I don't know if can you see my cursor? I think you can see it.
Yes, Ryennyoo.
Yeah, so
we can see it.
just so you can orientate yourself, this is the Ryennyoo River, and these circles indicate the sections of Lingtem village. So he would be passing down. This circle here is lower Lingtem, upper Lingtem. Then here we have Songklang, and this is Panang. That is technically not considered a part of Lingtem nowadays anymore, but in the rituals, also in the Buddhist rituals done at the monastery, it is part of their sort of ritual perception of the land. And this is Lik on the opposite side of the hill. So the Bung thing, I'm sorry, always when I go on to it, it doesn't move forward with the cursor. Sorry. Okay. So when he calls upon, and this goes back to what I said about that everything has two sides, the deities are ambivalent. So in the entire ritual recitation does not just call one deity or one being, it'll always call a pair. So it's always a pairing. The entire ritual language is pairing. The pairing of two words is what in Lepcha grammar is called akep. And if you make a sentence like that, it is called ringshok. And this is the entire ritual language is framed like that. It's also not only in Lepcha ritual language, it's also been documented, for example, for the Margara language by Michael Opitz. So if in a ritual, this is again a shortened form, there's a lot more supportive words in it, but you would have so it would be like we are paying the small tax and the small fruit. So it would always be a pairing repetition. And this is important because it shows a way of perceiving the landscape and of how they proceed in calling the deities. So in Lingtem, the Bung thing starts with calling. Again, for all the people from Lingtem, apologize for my pronunciation of the words, but he starts with calling Zung Tsum Hlo, which is this hill here on the closing to the upper realm of Lingtem, and then he will also on the Songklang side, and then he will call as the second one, and this is within the same rhyming verse, he will call Sum Phyok Hlo, which is on the lower side of Lingtem, closing to the lower realm. So it is not a circular movement like you would have in others. It goes in pairs, back and forth, calling on godly deities. So you would, if I use my cursor, it won't go further. Hang on, sorry about that. So then the next deities he calls on are Tendo Chuopanu and Lingichu that are further above, again in pairs. And here you see Lingichu, this under the tip of that leaf, that is Lingichu seen from the other side. Lingichu is quite a famous protector in the deity in the north of Sikkim, also connected to the flood narrative, similar to the one that you'd know from Tendong Lorongpat. So if we carry on, then Ryennyoo, the lower part, because it's lower to Lingtem, so it's considered the southern borders are closed. So here you see how in this pairing, it kind of makes a ritual closure of the boundaries to protect from any illnesses, any diseases coming in. Then here you see Ryennyoo River below Lingtem and the mountain peak in the background. So then from the outer rings, they sort of move in and reinforce. So you would have a calling of then you'd have Kimde, which is up here in your image on the left side up. You'd have Gongtyok and you'd have Padorkung, which are sort of towards the upper left side. And then on the Songklang side, he will call upon the other mountain deities there, Pamongkung, Lasung Panu, and Koryok Kung, which are these down here, if you see my cursor. So again, it's a kind of a peering in from the outside of a protective realm. So then, again, he moves more towards the middle and more towards the very intimate stories and the Lungten of Lingtem. So you would have this section, you would have spaces that are connected with ancestral figures, with the clans that are residing in Lingtem. Like, for example, he calls upon Sumdo Gyen and his abode Sadibong, which is a tree. So Sumdo Gyen is actually a precious stone. And I'm not going into the details of the narrative because I don't think I have so much time anymore. But this is the connected to the Turteling Putso, so the ancestor of this clan, Ting Margen. He saw this precious stone, something precious blinking on the other side. He went to Adenchu, which is on the other side of Mangan, took this stone back. It was a sacred, precious item. And then he had it on him, but then he was going to a funeral as he was a mun. So he left it in one space, and afterwards it vanished. He went to find it, and it had taken its new abode in this tree. So this whole clan, this tree becomes the protecting deity of the clan and of the ancestors of this lineage. Similarly, in this part of the ritual, he'd call upon Sambrankung, which is a bit slipped down in this image, which is a tree. I have an image of it. This is the boundary between Upper and Lower Lingtem. It's a very old tree. And this again is connected to the whole narrative of Namfing Nhu. She's a protector of Lingtem and potentially a historical figure. Again, I can't go into details, but it's connected with a war. She was taken away and then she finds a way home. She brings home a walking stick, and that walking stick is put in the ground there and becomes this tree. So all these sacred spaces are connected with the history, the oral tradition, the clans that reside in this space. So this intimate connection between the history, the mythology, the current day people, the past, the present, and the human and the non-human, and non-human in a very dualistic sense, the nature, but also the what we would call the supernatural residing within the nature. And then in the last wave, you would call on more embedded deities. This is connected with Lingtem Adipundi. You also have, he calls upon the protector of the monastery. So there you see the syncretism between Tibetan Buddhism and Lepcha religious tradition, which would be a talk for a different webinar. I can't go into that right now. But it is all connected with the history of the people of the place and the mythology of the people and the place. So going further, one question that I feel still remains is why would they listen? Like, you have these non-human supernatural beings, why would they even, the Liangdok Ungdok, listen to the rituals that the Bungthing are performing? What empowers them? So according to Lepcha mythology, this also goes back to the time of the creation, where the Moon and the Bungthing became negotiators between the human and the non-human actors and realms. So again, I'm going to tell a very, very, very short version of the story since the time is short. In the time of creation, the evil spirits, the Hmong, were harming the humans, and the humans were powerless. They couldn't do anything to stop this harm from happening. So, and this is a narrative as the Pentong Bungthing told me. Again, there are different versions in different places with different deities. So this is the Pentong Bungthing's version. But the person I'm showing you is the Lingtem Bungthing, and I will explain why. Anyway, so the deities gathered under the guidance of Kumya Kumshirum, who's the god of knowledge, and they summoned all the evil spirits and all the guardian deities, all the non-human beings of the land to Azumputam, which is literally translated the meeting place. And here they negotiated with the evil spirits to stop killing humans, but in return, the humans would offer to them in form of millet beer, grains, blood, and other edible items in a regular basis. And then they were looking for someone who could perform this offering, and there was no one there. So the creator deity created the first Moon and Bungthing. So it was their basic job description, one can say, to do these offerings. And according to the Pentong Bungthing, the first Mun, who he calls Adi Azuk Munkup, received ginger, a plant called parmu, and colorful thread, and a bundle of elephant grass, and this is what you see here, the pashor, to use within the interaction with the supernatural beings. And this is still, the pashor is still something very importantly used in all the cleansing rituals. This is a image from the Namsung ritual that they perform at New Year. So it is this contract that the moon and the boon thing had with the supernatural beings, which make them listen. And the moon and the boon thing are empowered through a lineage, and this is not a lineage that goes from father to son, from mother to daughter. It is the spirit that goes from one generation to the next, but it can jump a generation. It can go from nephew to father. So it's not a reincarnation in the sense of the Buddhist sense. It is a spirit that possesses you, that gives you these abilities, or gives the boon thing and the moon these abilities. So most of the rituals have a section which is the egg prediction, the egg divination. And in the case of Lingtem, where it is associated with the deities, it adds an interesting twist to this contract. It means that they don't always listen. And the egg prediction is there to give you a sense of was the ritual successful or not. So successful ritual is measured by there not being any incidents. So it's actually recognized by a non-event, like nothing is happening. The egg prediction is as such that when the egg is nice, there's an intact egg yolk, everything is good, then the offering was favorable. If there are some blood speckles or something, it could mean the deity is not very happy. Something might happen, and if there's a hole or a destruction of the egg yolk, then there will be death or larger incidents happening. Again, here ritual performances can be done to avert this. So now coming back to what I began my talk with, the earthquake and the date we have today. Why would the Lungzi Lungnong be so important in the event of an earthquake? So I met the Pentong Bung Thing a while after the earthquake, and we talked, and he basically said that we need to do the rituals. Everyone needs to do the rituals. And in the way he phrased it, the community, these annual rituals cannot stop the earthquake, but they can stop the earthquake from harming the specific villages. And the reason why they can't stop the earthquake has to do with this multi-layered cosmos I have told you about. But first I want to quickly narrate you what Pentong Bung Thing told me about how earthquakes happen according to Lepcha mythology. I don't know if every one of you is aware of this, so I'll just read this. This is a translation of what he told me. So Ipurum created the sacred Konshin king and Mutli, that is earthquake king. She created these two, but there was no place for humans because an ocean covered the whole area. So Ipurum thought about the human beings and where they could stay. She decided that Matlipunu would lie above the ocean, and on his body she created soil, and this became the earth where humans could live. But Matlipunu did not want to lie below the soil, so he moved below the earth and caused the whole world to shake. There was no control over the movements of his body. There were floods and earthquakes, so no human could stay there comfortably. Next, Ipurum thought about a solution. She decided that Konshinpono would pin down Motlipono's chest, so he could control the movements of his younger brother. So what we have here is Konshinpono, who's in the tol that I described beforehand, is pinning down Motlipono. And what or at least in my interpretation, I'm very open to discuss it, see is that conscience agency is, he's in a different realm than Matlipunu. He's visible, he's on the earth, whereas Matlipunu is below. And this is also a distinction made in the rituals, in the ritual language. You have Tol, which is the visibly up, the vertically up in the mountains. Then you have Taba, that is a non-seeable vertical up. And you have Chol, which is the plains, which is visibly down below. And then you have Meba, and Meba is below the world, the underworld, which is where the humans can't see or get there. So this is where Matlipono and also Ipudebabum stay. This is like their residency. So following this logic, the embeddedness of these deities within the realm that the humans can experience, within the environment, within the bamboo groves and the hillocks and the nature, is what makes the interaction with them possible. So the Mun and the Bungthing will interact with those deities that are living and are there within their realms. In this ontology, what I am proposing is that the deities that live with the humans, that stay with the humans, that are in the visible environment with the humans, these are the ones that are bound to ancestral knowledge, to myth, to the oral history of the region. They are but also open to change, because every incident that happens requires a new interaction. So it's not something that is dead, it is a lived interaction with these beings that are there. So it is future orientated in that way also, and it is remains a valid way to overcome vulnerability in and through the Himalayan ecosystem that the Lepchas live in. But this, of course, only as long as the world is still conceptualized like that. So as long as this knowledge is still there, as long as the people, the Lepcha community, the young people in the Lepcha community that are growing up know about these interactions with the non-human supernatural beings living within their environment and know how to interact with them. And I think I'll stop here. I've already taken more time, I think, with my glitch that is happening here. And I'm open to questions and interactions and yeah, anything people can't understand or didn't understand or want more details or clarifications on. Of course, I can switch.
Thank you so much, Ryennyoo, Dr. Jenny Bentley, for your wonderful presentation. Very enlightening.
Stop sharing.
Thank you, Ryennyoo. So we do have a couple of questions, and I will be reading out those questions to you. Before I would proceed to the question and answer session of this webinar, I would like to remake the announcement that if anybody has any questions, you can kindly type them in the chat box and I will convey it to Ryennyoo Dr. Jenny Bentley. Also, we have created a poll for the webinar, and we would like to encourage everybody, all the participants, to take part in the poll and rate our webinar. Thank you. So thank you so much for the wonderful and detailed presentation, Ryennyoo. I think we have quite a number of questions, interesting questions, Ryennyoo. So I will read the first question. The first question is by Charles Turkey. So the question goes like this: how has the contemporary narratives changed from post-colonial framework? And also, what motives or themes are getting attached as compared to post-colonial and pre-modern? Or how has Tokchol metamorphosized, if it did, in the particular Lepcha construction?
Okay, so let me rephrase this again. We're talking about research, like how it has changed in the research or among the Lepcha community as a... Because, of course, research has done a lot of moves since colonial research, since the colonial or post-colonial perception of how one would approach the people one is researching upon, how these communities are included in the processes of generating the information and the knowledge exchange, how knowledge gets fed back, how knowledge gets processed, and also brought further since the colonial or also post-colonial perception of how anthropology as a research field would have been done. I don't think I can answer that question for the Lepcha community itself, how they see themselves aligned within a post-colonial world and how they perceive their own identities. Probably be enough more lectures here in this crowd, in this webinar, who could speak more for themselves on that topic, I think.
Thank you so much, Ryennyoo. Let's move on to the next question. Ryennyoo, so this next question is by Arthing85. Okay, would she clarify? Okay, would you clarify the difference between Chirim and Churum?
Yeah. This is a difficult question in that sense, and it is a question that has been discussed among, I think, a lot of members of the Lepcha associations. Churum is basically to the mountain, and I would say, and I'm very open to discuss this because I think there's no ultimate answer to this question, is the ritual that every clan performs to their guardian deity, so to their Chu. In Zongu, this would be the Polafat, like the clan ritual. So it was not a community ritual in that sense, but it was performed by the community of one clan. Chirim is the ritual to protect the land. So in other parts, it would probably be more related to what they call Yangrumfat. So the core of these rituals, the Yangrumfat and of Chirim, is the appeasement of the Lungzi Longnon, so the Lungzi Fat, so the appeasement of the actual local specific guardian deities of the specific place you are doing the ritual from. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ryennyoo. Okay, so let's go to the next question. It's from Anahat. So the question goes like this: do the spirits of the land and animals during rituals have a form? Do they change if they do? And how does the understanding of the status of the ritual come through?
So they don't have a visible form in the sense they get called into specific like paraphernalia that are there in the altar. So the abodes are giving for them where they can sit in, depending on which ritual it is. But it's not, you can't see, at least I can't. I mean, maybe the Boomthing can see them, or the moon can see them. But there's also knowledge that one wouldn't share with someone who is not initiated. So I can't speak for that. But for a non-initiated person, they're not visible, so they don't visibly change any form. They are called into abodes to take their seat and receive the offerings that are given to them.
Right. Thank you, Ryennyoo. Ryennyoo, and if I may add to this question, Ryennyoo, regarding the forms of the deities, like, is there any parameter in which the forms themselves are defined and accepted by the Boomthing?
You mean forms as in how they would be visualized?
Yes.
Not that I know of. Lepcha is not, as far as I know, it's not a very visualized religious tradition in the sense that you would, you know, like you have in Tibetan Buddhism, where you would have tankas, you would have like this, the whole kind of iconography of a religion. I think that is also says for the shamanic tradition of it, is that this close linkage between the deity and their abode is enough. That is the form would be, you know, what I said before, and that you have that in colloquial understanding, you have the linkage between the abode and the deity. So the form would probably be more the abode, I think. The attachment to nature is what it makes it. It's not, it doesn't have a, at least as far as I've come across, and I'm very, very happy to hear more about that if someone else has any more information on that. There is no, you don't attach them necessarily to a symbol, but it's attached to the nature. The nature is what, where the deity has its abode, where, or the moon, also the evil spirits has their abodes and has their manifestations.
I see. Thank you so much, Ryennyoo. Ryennyoo, we have another question. This question is by Gyatso Lepcha.
Yes.
So the question goes, besides Libek Kyung, with whom you probably had major conversations and study, do you find anyone, Boomthing, who will be having all these knowledge and could perform or appease the deities of the region?
You mean specifically in Lingtem or in Zongu? Is there any specifications on that?
So the question does not specify a geographical locale.
I mean, as I said, I haven't been up there in a while. Lingtem, I'm hearing that there is one boom thing up in Lingtem now. Titi Gatso, I think, who's performing the rituals. Lingtem people, correct me if I'm wrong. But I haven't talked to him in the recent years, so I couldn't make an assessment on that. I do feel it is an absolute urgency. The boom thing that I talked to, or the padim, let's use the Zongu word here, 3 of them have already passed away. So with them, their knowledge, unless they have, their students take it up. The boom thing of Pentong is in his 90s and he's not keeping well at the moment. The Netug Lepcha I spoke to is very hard in hearing, so they're becoming very frail and difficult for them to share their knowledges. So I do think it is something that is a bit concerning that we have JJ has just added that he does well in Lingtem. I'm very excited actually to meet Titi Gatso because I haven't met him, so I plan to do that when I come to Lingtem. Thank you, JJ Miss, for adding that. So there seems to be someone there in Lingtem who has taken over well from Netug Lepcha. But I think in many places it is a sense of concern that there is not many people to take over from the older generation. And actually, when I looked into the history, again, this is resources that could be warped. I tracked and I asked about the history of the Mun and Bung thing in Lingtem. And, just a generation back, there were 8 or 9 padim in Lingtem and about 4 or 5 senior mun. And now we're down to there's no mun. There's no mun anymore. So I think that is a point raised very well by Gatso. That is a concern, I think, in lots of Lepcha communities. And I actually think, again, this is a theory based on the rituals, that traditionally every clan would have their own boom thing because they are connected with all the narratives of the clan. They know their clans and they know their localities. And since it goes through a lineage, it would have been always the same clan. It goes through a male lineage. So it's always the same clan that has the same boom thing. So a lot of rituals potentially in the past were just done within the clans. The community was the clan. Whereas now the clan is not so relevant for many, many rituals because not every clan has a boom thing. Yeah.
Right. Okay, Ryennyoo, thank you so much for clarifying that. We have a question from Anselm Normal Ronka. The question is, Yangdok and Undok, the protectors seem to be somewhat evil, who needs to be appeased again and again. If not, humans cry and pain and suffering cannot touch these deities. Do you want me to read it again, Ryennyoo?
No, but I didn't. Yeah, I understood it, but I didn't really see a question in it. But no, yes, the Langdok Unduk, they require interaction. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily negative. I mean, it all depends on your viewpoint, I guess, in the end, of how you interpret this kind of interaction. But I guess any form of relationship, if you look at it on a human level, also if you don't nurture it in whatever parameters your relationship is set, if you just ignore it, then the other person will, if we sort of transport it into not a human non-human relationship, but into a human relationship, if you wouldn't acknowledge the existence of the other, if you wouldn't, talk to that person or sort of exchange gifts with that person in whatever way, then that person would also not be happy anymore. So I think this might be broken down to a very basic level, but the sense is that it is an interaction and an acknowledgement of that, the space you share. Say for example, if you talk about human interactions, there's a certain unwritten code about how you treat your neighbors. You don't listen to loud music at 3 o'clock in the morning because no other people are sleeping. You don't go and throw your garbage on their balcony. You don't go, there's just certain things that we know we don't do because we know we share our space with other humans. So I guess if you look at the world from this kind of indigenous epistemology that I have formulated, then the non-human actors within this cosmology have just as much right and say within these interactions, and the spaces don't only belong to us humans, but also belong to these non-human interactions. So if they're not, these relationships are not maintained, they're not valued or respected, there will be retributions on that.
Yes, Ryennyoo. Ryennyoo, could I add another question to this? So you mentioned about the relationship between human and non-human entities has to be respected, right? So, of course, in your fieldwork, how would you, weigh material respect, as opposed to ritualistic respect?
Material respect, you mean in which way?
Material respect in terms of millet beer or certain sacrifices, right, to please the deities, right? So you talked about respect between the human and non-human attributes, right, Ryennyoo? So so when we talk about respect, are we talking about a certain tangible exchange?
But in case of ritual, the exchange is tangible. Yes, it's yes. Like you give offerings, you give this, you give that. But there are other forms. I mean, this is what I presented today is based on these ritual interactions, because it just gives a nice way of showing out, how people map and understand the lands through these rituals. But there are other interactions that are not in a ritual space that are non-material in that sense. For example, that you don't go and disturb certain spaces because it's an abode. You wouldn't, just certain ways, but how people would interact with the environment. And this is again, of course, if they're looking at the world through this indigenous ontology. I mean, also people now living within these areas might not necessarily always be aware and always acknowledge their environment around them as sacred.
See, that's very interesting, Ryennyoo. Ryennyoo, we have another question from Ren STS Lepcha. So his question goes, did you find any Lungten Themala ritual in your study?
Lungten what?
Lungten Themala, I'll spell it for you, Themala.
Themala, no, I didn't, no.
So he's, I think, described Lungten Thenmala also. So he writes Lungten Thelama to be an oracle ritual sang by both the Bomthing and the non-Bomthing in a trance stage overnight.
No, I haven't come across that ritual. I'd be very interested if it is performed anywhere to document that, if anyone knows about that. I haven't come across that ritual in my stays in Zongu. I must say that my most of my village research was up in Zongu, so of course rituals which would be performed in other spaces, I am not the expert on that. And of course it could also be performed there, and I wasn't there at that time, didn't hear of it, because again, research is, I think this is also the way we need to look at research. We're discovering, we're asking questions, but of course, if you don't know certain things, you also sometimes don't ask the right questions. I learned a lot during my research. A lot of things were not clear in the beginning, and then suddenly I'm asked one question and a whole flood of things opened up. That might have not happened if I hadn't stumbled over that question. The other way around, how many other questions did I not ask? So I think that is the main thing, is asking, and all the, if you, as a Lepcha growing up, you're interested in your heritage and culture, and just go and ask, find out, where are our sacred spaces, how do you understand the environment, to whoever elders you still have in your villages that would know these kind of things, because I think that's how we grow knowledge on how Lepcha people can grow knowledge on their culture, because it's all oral, or unless what has been written down, but so it's a treasure trove of oral tradition out there, and of knowledge of how to live and interact with the environment here, that will die with the people who have it if one doesn't ask for it. So I think, there's so much more out there. I'd be very interested to hear more about this ritual if anyone does know about it.
Yes, thank you, Ryennyoo. Ryennyoo, Dr. James Simic asks, please say something about the Mun and Bomthings of Kalimpong and Darjeeling.
say something about the Mun and Bung thing of Kalimpong and Darjeeling. To be honest, I can't say that much in detail about them because I have not, my research was more specific on Zongu when it came to the village Mun and Bung thing. I know that there are Mun and Bung thing, and I've spoken to some, but I would not want to lay myself out to describe anyone without really doing the detailed research on that. And I have not done any detailed research on the Mun and Bung thing in Kalimpong and Darjeeling. Since I'm back in the region again now, I'd be very happy to take that up and do more detailed research in that region. Because my research in Kalimpong and Darjeeling was mainly the urban space of Kalimpong and Darjeeling, and not, really in the villages and speaking with the rituals. That was how my research design was at that time. But I'd be very happy to go and have this conversation maybe in a year when I've gone and spoken to some more.
We would love that, Ryennyoo. Most definitely, at least in the Kalimpong and the Darjeeling region. Yes, Ryennyoo. So there's another question. Okay, the question is, can you elaborate a bit on the marriage of Buddhism and Lepcha mythology? I asked this because when I was in Zongu, an elder told me that Muns and Bongthings are not reborn because of the cremation after death owing to the Buddhist influence. Whereas he says that burying the dead would ensure rebirth of Muns and Bongthings. What is your opinion about this?
Yeah, this is a very common explanation given for the reason why no more Mun and Bongthing are like being found or born, or people do not, the spirits basically don't come back. It's because the death rituals are not performed according to the Lepcha way. I think that is because within this syncretism, there was basically sort of a different practices were taken over by the different religious specialists, and one of the things which, at least for a long time, was done by the Buddhist monks was the death ritual, and so most death rituals were performed in the Buddhist way, and whereas other practices like the clan rituals, the community rituals, are still done by the Mun and the Bongthing. There is also like the Bungkor, for example, which is a Buddhist ritual, which is, looking at the other side, is that that's where they take the books out of the monastery and they walk the guardian deities with the boundaries of the sacred Buddhist land, which are the exact same ones that the Bongthing also narrates. And for example, in this one, the monks perform rituals to the guardians of the land in Lepcha. So there's vice versa, these kind of things. But what you were referring to in this question is that the death rituals are not done anymore by the Mun and the Bongthing. But this being said, there are, like, when the Tariang Mun passed, they very specifically buried him and performed the rituals by the Mun Bongthing. Additionally to the lamas were also there, but I think there's a lot of awareness of that now at the moment happening, that maybe yeah.
Yes. So follow up to the earlier question about Lungten Tenmala that Ryennyoo Lepcha asks. He's written, it's an almost similar ritual described by Mr. Alex Huxley in his Noble Root. Right. So, yeah. Ryennyoo, I think you had mentioned that you had not come across this ritual, right?
No,
Ryennyoo?
I will look into that. Thank you.
Yes, Ryennyoo. Thank you, Ryennyoo. Do we have any other questions for Ryennyoo Dr. Jenny? If you have any questions, could you please post it in the chat, or if not, you can raise your hands too, because we still have time for the question and answer session. And
if anyone would like to contact me on any behalf, I'm very happy to share my email for any personal further conversations if anyone is interested in that.
Do we have any further questions? Ryennyoo, if I may ask, you had talked about religious processes, and I feel that the whole webinar, one of the main fulcrums is the whole idea of religious processes as interactions between the natural and the supernatural, right, Ryennyoo? So you had actually mentioned that you saw some schematics that were quite similar to Tibetan Buddhism, which obviously you said that it would be another webinar to delve into that. But Ryennyoo, if I may ask, in your research, have you found any other quote-unquote religious processes that align or are culturally parallel to that of the Lepchas? Not necessarily a monotheistic religion per se.
Well, I think there's a lot of similarities between the different shamanic traditions within the Himalayas, and there's also, these traditions are also in that sense fluid, in the sense that a Lepcha, like when we talk about illness, a Lepcha Mung can harm a Limbu person. So the Limbu, he cannot do anything there. So the Lepcha Limbu will go to the Lepcha shaman to be healed. So there's a lot of interactions. There are, when incidents happen, there is, for example, a ritual performed that I heard of in West Sikkim, where the Limbu shaman performs a ritual to a Lepcha deity, which has to do with their history of interactions. There are Lepcha Yaba and Yama, which come from the burn of the Bhutia people. There are Yaba Yama, yeah, and there are Lepcha Bishwa. There's a lot of syncretism, and because I think these are interactions with the environment, but these are also people living in the same environment. So the deities will also interact with Limbus, with Lepchas. So I think there is a lot of interactions that are there, and it would be very interesting. Like, I've always been interested to go and see that ritual where the Limbu shaman performs a ritual to a Lepcha deity, and actually find out where, the history of it or the mythology behind it and these kind of things. So I think I wouldn't look at it as such closed systems, because I think these are also systems that our colonial categorization of the world props onto systems that are a lot older than that. So I don't think we would have even asked that question 200 years ago. This like trying to put things into neat categorized buckets and boxes is a very British colonial census approach to things, tick off all these. So, and I think the reality of things is a lot more interactions, a lot more similarities, and or distinctions on very different levels that are not necessarily ethnic in that sense. So I think, there's most, if you want to like really boil it down to like sort of structural things, most Himalayan shamanic traditions have two types of religious specialists, like Lepcha Mumbung thing. The similar distinctions will be there among the Tamang and the Kirati, the Yapa, the Limbu. They also always have two distinct different types of religious specialists that interact with the supernatural in different ways, that take on different offices and different forms of interaction. So already this is similar. And of course there will be different deities, there will be different mythologies, there'll be, not saying everything's the same, but I'm saying there are certain structural similarities in how you understand your environment, which is very different to maybe the Christian understanding of the environment or so I do think there's a lot of comparison that can be done. That there's also a lot of comparison that has been done in research among the Himalayan shamanic communities.
Yes, Ryennyoo. I think the further researches to come in this field would be wonderful in terms of cross-cultural reactions with the deities and what the deities actually have to say to the cross-cultural rituals.
Which language they speak in.
Yeah, exactly. All of those nitty-gritties. So not same but similar, right? So it would be very interesting. So may I ask? Okay, so there is a question by Chungjae Lepcha, if I've read your name correctly. So the question says, "Ma'am, how difficult okay, did you get to research about your culture, our culture? Although we know that Lepcha language isn't our mother tongue.
How, say that again? Like the asking is how difficult it was for me to do the research on the culture, or how difficult would it be for her to do the research?
No, I think it implied the former, Ryennyoo.
How difficult it was for me to do the research.
Yes.
I mean, obviously it was, some parts were difficult. I learned a lot of the language. I also learned to speak Nepali. Actually, I learned both mixed because initially for the foreigner's ear, I didn't really hear the difference between a Nepali word and a Lepcha word. Everything was just different. So I learned a very mixed language until I realized that these are two languages I'm learning at the moment. So, but I think I was, and it was difficult because of course you just walk into people's houses. If I imagine in my home place in Switzerland, someone could just come and ring your doorbell and be like, I want to talk to you. Everyone would just be, no way, you know, I'm not going to talk to you. So, but I think I was very fortunate. When I came to Sikkim, I had the support of the Namgyal Institute of Tibetology that opened up many doors for me. And at that time, Dawa Lepcha was working there, who was from Tongu, who we'll be introducing later. So he enabled a lot of entrance to me. So I think it's kind of like getting to know people who support you to get to know other people who support you to get to know other people. And also the Lepcha associations of all parts were always very supportive in what I was doing. They were also critical, which I liked. You know, there was also a questioning of why are you here? What are you going to write? And you know, what are your aims and motives? And which is valid and good, I think, and also made me question, what am I doing here? Why am I here? And what do I want? So I do think language is a big issue. I think that is one thing that Lepcha members of the Lepcha community who actually speak Lepcha have a lot of advantages in that respect, to actually go and ask these questions, even if you're not doing research, and document, or not doing academic research, and document these questions in any form and way that you know, nowadays you can just have a blog or a social media account and share the narratives and stories, or in whatever way you would want to talk to your own children then about it. So I think, yeah, it was one thing on a more like academic way, which I found difficult, I think, was that, as maybe referring to the very first question that came, that of course I'm trained in a very different way of defining and acknowledging what culture is than what culture is defined, at least in the administrative sort of setup of India, where you have to have one language, one, you know, it's very sort of uniformist kind of like colonial interpretation of how you should self-define or define a culture. And of course I come from a academic tradition that completely deconstructs that builds different ideas of how one can self-understand one's culture, how one researches one's culture. And I think that was sometimes difficult to kind of like the interaction in that, on that level, to also make the people understand like what I'm actually doing and how I'm actually going to write about it. Yeah, I think that was,
yes.
These were interesting conversations though, I think, where I grew as a person, but also as an academic, having these interactions.
Yes, Ryennyoo, and I think this is very relevant because, of course, syncretic epistemologies can reveal so many different things to what we already thought was the full stop, right, Ryennyoo? And also what you talked about, non-academic questions. Perhaps those questions can reveal so much more than what you know, is thought to be revealed after a very careful research design. So I think accidents that way are wonderful blessings, Ryennyoo.
Well,
So
my supervisor comes from a academic, like more. Let's put it that way. What my supervisor told me when I was going to the field for the first time was like, oh, just go, just be there. Right. I was like, but I need to have something. But in the end, I think a lot of things I found that really sort of opened up questions to me and made me see things were really things I just stumbled over. I maybe shouldn't say this as a researcher, but a lot of ethnographic work is like that. You have your research design, you ask questions, but then you get answers you never thought you'd get, and suddenly you're opening up into fields that you couldn't assume beforehand. And in a way, it's also important for research to be open to these changes that happen, because of course you can't pre-design everything, because then why are you going to go and do research, because you already know what. Yeah. So I think, yeah, but that's also why my PhD took so long, because then it meandered into different places, and then the earthquake happened and sort of shook everything up. Yeah.
Yes, Ryennyoo. So are there any more questions or any more hands to be raised? I don't think so. And we have almost approached the end time for the question and answer. So I think we will conclude the question and answer session for now. And Ryennyoo, thank you so much for your webinar and also the Q&A session. Because apart from it just being a descriptive webinar, it's opened us so many unexplored avenues that can, further be researched upon. And I think that is always a wonderful and an exciting thing, not only to the field of academia, but also to somebody who wants to learn about his own community, or somebody who wants to learn about somebody else's community. So I think possibilities are immense. And I think the highlight of this webinar, apart from the substance you delivered, was also on those possibilities. So yeah, most definitely, Ryennyoo, it was amazing. Thank you so much. Ryennyoo, I would also like you to introduce Ren Dawa. Ren Dawa Lepcha. But Ryennyoo, please let me update you. We tried to get in touch with Ren Dawa, but I think he's in a place where there is almost nil network connectivity. So you might have to do the entire introduction, after which we will...
I'm sure I'm up to that, but let's see.
Yes, Ryennyoo.
Best. I hoped he could be here, because if anyone can introduce his work, with passion. I don't know how many of you saw his webinar, but maybe after you're done here, it's on. Oh no, it's not on YouTube yet, is it? It will come soon, I think. No, you can hear him talk about his work by himself. But I'll do my best to give a short introduction to that one.
Yes, Ryennyoo, could you, even if many people didn't attend this webinar, I think most people have seen his movie, Dogboom. So yeah, I think it'd be easy that way. Yeah, Ryennyoo, so could you please...
you want to start now?
Yes,
Sorry,
Ryennyoo.
Yeah. Okay, so I am actually very honored to be able to introduce Dawa Lepcha. For me, he was always the Lepcha community's filmmaker. As I said, I'm not going to make this about me, but I'll introduce quickly how I do know him. So he was really one of the first people I knew here, and really opened up a lot of spaces here. So when I met him, he was working at the Namgyal Institute of Tibetalology, and I don't know how many of you know this. Dawa always wanted to make films, as is what he told me. And he also went to film school in Calcutta, got the training. Then he did the Lepcha Bridge and another film, I forgot the name, some really out of his own pocket, and he made them. And then he started working at the Tibetology together with Anna Belici, who I think is here today, might not be here anymore. And basically received training in ethnographic filming, also amongst others from Arsene Belici, who's one of the pioneers of ethnographic film. And he had a lot of passion in it, and did many films. All these films are online and available at the Tibetology website if you want to go and see what Dawa did before he did Dogbu. They are films on the Lingtem Cham, this Tingvong, a Lepcha village, which is really interesting if you were interested in the topic of my talk, because you see Tingvong and they talk to elders and the Bung thing. And then there's of course the ritual journey, which was released in 2011, that follows the Linkomun, his initiation, his stories, his rituals. So whoever is interested in this topic, really go and look there and look at Dawa's movies, his ethnographic material. These Tingvong, the movie Lepcha, Tingmon, the Lepcha village, and the ritual journeys were screened internationally at anthropological film festivals. The ritual journey also won an award at the Royal Anthropological Institute's Film Festival. So from an anthropologist's perspective, before he started doing feature movies, it was already like amazing material and work he's done. He also collaborated together with another filmmaker on a film, I forgot the title now, on the Drukpa, which is the most watched film from the Tibetology. They have 6 lakh views, I think. So, and then after while actually being a very influential environmental campaigner to protect all these sacred spaces and that I just talked about today, he then did Dokbu, very passionate about narrating basically bringing a fiction movie on the ideas of sacred land and the Mayal Kyong to a larger audience and in the indigenous language, which is amazing. And I think what we're talking about too today is enabling Dokbu too, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Jordan will talk more about this later. So Dokbu 2 is in the start lines, in the making. It's I've sneak peeked the script and it's going to be just one hell of a story, I can say, with like, I'm not going to say more, but it's yes. So and he's putting a lot of passion and a lot of skill into this, and his team is amazing. Please do, when you can, listen to the webinar, because I wish they could already watch it today, because I think it's one of these webinars I enjoyed every second of it. It's witty, it's fun, and but it's also so passionate, and also shows the challenges of making a full feature film movie in the environment of Zongo, in the forests, in the woods, and with very limited funds, with very limited access to technical equipment and all the hi-fi things that would be available in other places of the world, and they still made it happen, and they made it happen in an amazing way, and how the team got together to make that happen, and how, instead of using modern technology, they were so creative in how they got these effects done. So I think Dokbu 2 promises a lot more of that.
Right. Thank you so much. Yes, Ryennyoo. Thank you so much, Ryennyoo, for introducing Rendawa. Actually, Rendawa was supposed to be here, but his network connectivity is very low. So we might not be as lucky as Ryennyoo Bentley to get a sneak peek in the script, but we do have the trailer for Dokbu 2 lined up. So I would like to wish the organizer to kindly put up the trailer for the upcoming movie of Rendawa, Dokbu 2.
लामलग्ग चिम्बो
फेरि त्यो सपना देखे
फेरि त्यो टार्जनको मरेछ
Will you take me there if I ever come back again? I'm seriously thinking about finding this paradise.
अरे थे फोका कताब وبين ستحالة
Yeah, goosebumps. So yeah. It's quite unfortunate for Rendawa to not be present here. But anyway, from what we heard from Ryennyoo Bentley, the movie is going to be amazing, right? And it's, of course, Rindhawa's perseverance and his talent that we could see such a wonderful movie, Dogbu. And Dogbu 2, promises to be better, and we can all be a part of this avenue. Because Rindhawa Lepcha will soon be starting, or I think he's already started, a crowdfunding for his movie, right? So I think all of us can be a part of this wonderful initiative and contribute in whatever manner we can. So we will be sending a mail to all the registered participants regarding the crowdfunding, and we would also be sending the link to the crowdfunding the crowdfunding process. And we would encourage everybody present in this webinar, and not just everybody, all your acquaintances, all your friends, to be, a part of this wonderful journey, and just, be a part of this wonderful movie, Dogbu 2, because the first one, like Ryennyoo Bentley said, was amazing. With all the limitations that they had, it was off the charts. So yes, there will be a mail informing all the participants of the crowdfunding. So thank you so much, Ryennyoo Bentley, for introducing Rindhawa Lepcha. And yes, we will be sending that mail shortly. So I would like to proceed now to the vote of thanks. I cannot begin this by not thanking our speaker. Thank you so much, Ryennyoo Dr. Jenny Bentley. Agyap Tokchimo. The seminar was wonderful, and I particularly enjoyed the substance, yes, definitely, but also so much of unexplored avenues that are just waiting to be discovered in, if I may say, Maya land. So thank you so much, Ryennyoo, for your time, for your presentation, and we hope the RLCWS can work with you in our future projects together. I would also like to thank our president, Ren Gideon Namchu, for his words of wisdom and for always being there as a voice, as a conscience, as an advisor. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your help in almost everything we do. So thank you so much. I would like to especially thank Soma Jong, Ren Gideon Tasho, and Ren Zera Rongong for managing this Google Meet platform in the last moment, because the schedule was busy. Everybody had their own work, but thank you so much for making this happen. And thank you so much for organizing this webinar so smoothly. I would now come to thank the webinar team. Ryennyoo Ivy Namchu, Ryennyoo Dr. Melissa Namchu, Ren Zera Rongong, Ryennyoo Gefringdi. Thank you so much for helping Rongring RLCWS Society pull this wonderful webinar. I would also like to thank Ren Chawang for his technical inputs, for always being there. He's got a very busy schedule, but thank you, Ren Chawang, and it is with all your help that we can, mark our presence in the hyper-real digital scape of today's virtual social, which is so important on account of the pandemic. Thank you so much, Ren Chawang. I would like to put forth my gratitude to all the Rongring core members and to our teacher, Laponmu Jongmit Lepcha, for their guidance, their consistent, continuous, invaluable support. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank the previous webinar team for sharing their inputs so that we could carry off this webinar well. And I cannot conclude my vote of thanks by not thanking all the participants who actually registered for this webinar and who this one sat with us through the webinar. Thank you so much. We see your act of participation not only as just an act of participation, but also as a support that you are actively lending to our Rongring Cultural Society for all our future endeavors. Yes, we plan to do a lot of things for the amelioration of our community, but we cannot do it alone. And hopefully in the coming days, we might find a friend in you. So thank you so much. I beg your pardon for anybody that I've missed in my vote of thanks. Now that I conclude this, I would like to make an announcement about the Rongreng Batch 8. May I ask the organizer to kindly display the background? Thank you so much, Ren. So we are the Rongreng Language School, which is a part of the Rongreng Lepcha Culture and Welfare Society, is actually having its Batch 7 classes where people from all walks of life, all countries, all different time zones come and learn the Lepcha language. So we would like to inform about the commencement of Batch 8, which will actually happen from the month of October. So this is an advertisement regarding that. And we would encourage everybody, all the participants, to kindly register and learn the language of the mountains. So it would be a great honor for us to, sit together and learn the Lepcha language, which is designated as one of the endangered languages in the UNESCO list of endangered languages. I would also like to mention that the registration team would be reaching out, the Rongreng registration team would be reaching out to all the people who have registered to ask if they are interested in learning the Lepcha language. So thank you so much. Now, and before we conclude today's session, I would like to let's all of us indulge in our Lepcha slogan. Of course, all of you or most of you are familiar with Achule, but we are going to do it in the way that it was always been done, not by our uncles or aunties, our grandfathers or grandmothers, but our ancestors across the generation. So essentially, we do this to celebrate the spirit of Lepchahood, the spirit of commonness, joy, gratitude, and thankfulness, not only, for our Lepcha brothers and sisters, but also, in rejoicing the ecosystem that we live in, the mountains, the rivers, the valleys. So it is going to be this way. I am going to say a few lines, and may I request everybody to wholeheartedly respond by saying Achule. So let us begin. Mutanti Rongka. Mutanti Rungkok. Mutachi Rongkok Rungkok. Agyap Tokchimo. Thank you so much for making this.
Tokchimo.
Thank you.
Thank you.